Mr. Speaker, I recall that a few years ago, I was invited by a dear colleague in the celebration of his 50th wedding anniversary. I would say, Mr. Speaker, I was so happy. Maybe I am so lucky also because I was one of those who was allowed to witness what I perceived to be a very organized, well-attended family rejoicing. In my recollection, Mr. Speaker, it was a very happy and ideal setting for someone who had vowed to cherish the institution of marriage. I'm referring to the Honorable Edsel Lagman, Mr. Speaker, my good friend. When they celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary, golden anniversary, with his wonderful and dear wife, Cielo. Mr. Speaker, I cannot forget an episode in that family rejoicing where a member of the family stood to describe what kind of marriage best fit the one of my dear friend Kong Edsel and his dear wife, Cielo. Ang sabi niya, Mr. Speaker, I do not need a fantasy to describe how happy, how ideal this marriage is. Hindi ko po ma-recall yung ibang detalye, ngunit ako po ay sumang-ayon sapagkat sa nakita ko pong mga muka ng dumalo, happy faces, talaga pong tumetestigo sa isang matagumpay na pagsasama ng dalawang mag-asawa. My question, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, bakit po kaya si Kong Edsel pa yung nag-sponsor ng isang bill? Bakit kaya hindi na lang iba sa atin? Sapagkat yung nakita ko pong katatagan, tagumpay, at isang hindi may kakailang makabuluhang pagsasama ng dalawang tao, ay hindi ko maisip kung bakit siya pa ang magi-sponsor ng isang divorce bill na alam naman nating ito po ay makapagpapawalang bisa sa seremonya, sa kabanalan ng pag-aasawa. May I have some comments, Mr. Speaker?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Speaker. The divorce bill, once it becomes a law, is not for everybody. Majority of the marriages in the Philippines, I think overwhelming majority of the marriages in the Philippines are enduring and loving relationship. Just like my marriage with my late wife, Cielo. And to my mind, those happy marriages should not be affected by the passage of this bill. This bill is for the exceptional circumstances where marriage has hit the rocks and is beyond repair. While it is said that marriages are solemnized in heaven, some of them plummet into hell irremediably. So, the state has the responsibility to secure spouses and their children from a house on fire. This is the reason why I have introduced this bill even before my wife and I celebrated our golden wedding anniversary. This is not for happy marriages. It is for marriages which have crumbled and are beyond repair, so that there is need for them to be given relief or a lifeline so that they can be rescued from these constant conflicts which even would affect their children. Mr. Speaker, all countries in the world have legitimized divorce, except the Philippines and the tiny ecclesiastical state of the Vatican. What does this mean? This means that there can be no unanimous blunder in these countries where divorce is allowed. And these countries would include Catholic countries and Christian countries. So in other words, divorce does not offend the Catholic or the Christian faith. And we believe very strongly that thousands of women in the Philippines who are living in disastrous relationship would need this absolute divorce so that they can secure a possible second chance at marital bliss. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the sponsor admitted that divorce law or this divorce bill is not intended for everybody, that it is only targeting those marriages with peculiar characters that probably needing divorce bill. So if it is for a special group of people or marriages, Mr. Speaker, it might fall under the character of a class legislation. And we should not do that. Because all laws are supposed to be applicable to all citizens of this republic. We are not supposed to legislate something that should only be for use of a few, of a special class. I will not agree with the proposition, Mr. Speaker, that the divorce bill should only be for those marriages which are at the brink of collapse. Who is going to make a judgment, Mr. Speaker, that a certain marriage is now supposed to be terminated by way of a divorce? Bakit po nung itong dalawang tao na humarap po sa kabanalan ng pagsaisang dibdib, hindi po ba ang malimit nilang sinasabi, for better or for worse? Sa karamdaman o sa kalusugan, till death do us part, Sir Speaker. Hindi ba ganun po yung general premise natin? Bakit po ang daming nag-survive? And the best example is the one of the good sponsor, Mr. Speaker. Bakit hindi po ang gawin nating panuntunan, pagtulong-tulungan po natin ang mga marriages na nahihirapan? Kung kukunti naman pala yun, and there are only a special few, sabi ng ating sponsor, we're not supposed to legislate a bill that will be characterized as a class legislation, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I don't have to teach my distinguished colleague on what is the meaning of class legislation. This is not absolute. Members of the same class who are affected by the same circumstances would not be class legislation if a law is passed for their benefit or for their needs. So this bill is not class legislation. Number two, no less than the Supreme Court in Te versus Te declared that the dissolution of a marriage is a merciful interment of a long dead marriage.